Okay, let's get some legal analysis now on how the suspect could be charged. For that, I'm going to turn to Amy Lee Copeland. Amy Lee is a former U.S. federal prosecutor and criminal defense attorney joining us from Savannah, Georgia. Amy Lee, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, good evening, Sarah.
So the suspect here, Tyler Robinson, 22 years old, is being held on several initial charges, but we understand there could be more. Right now, we've got aggravated murder. What else are you watching for in terms of possibilities here?
So in the state system, he is being held on aggravated murder and possession of a firearm charge. Given the president's friendship with Mr. Kirk, his anger, his statements, I expect federal charges would be likely in this case. There is no federal domestic terrorism statute per se. I think the clearest path for a federal charge would be for a firearms-based charge. If you use a firearm during a crime of violence and it results in death, then the federal government can seek the death penalty. That's what the federal government did against Luigi Mangione, the young man who shot and killed the United Healthcare CEO. And I expect those types of charges to arise here.
It's interesting that you brought up Luigi Mangione, because I had been reading through this case involving the accusations against Tyler Robinson, and I felt like there appear to be at least some parallels to watch for, given what has happened and given all this talk of federal charges. You there mentioned the close friendship between Charlie Kirk and the U.S. President Donald Trump. How does that, I mean, is that another level? Like, is there some influence that could be exerted here?
Well, you know, I'm certain that the president has made the call to the Department of Justice just to say, is there anything we can do federally? You know, I'm of course not privy to those types of discussions, but given his expressions in the media and his public statements, I would not be at all surprised if that call has already been made.
And then for a Canadian audience, if you can, why do federal charges? Like, what's significant about there being federal charges in a trial that could come?
Typically, they have many more resources than the state government does. You know, murder is almost always a state crime, but the federal government can get involved. There would be more resources to bear in terms of the investigative force, in terms of the prosecution force, in terms of, you know, actually seeing this to the conclusion. Death penalty cases take a very long time to try and to resolve, and this would perhaps give a faster track to resolution if the federal government got involved.
I mean, we heard from the Utah Governor Spencer Cox that the state officials are going to pursue the death penalty.
Yeah.
Based on what we have seen here in terms of, I mean, obviously this is reports in the media, but evidence that it does appear that there is, or at least that will be presented. How likely do you think there is for death penalty be on the table and for the possibility of conviction?
So I don't know anything about the Utah statutory death penalty scheme. A lot of times state statutes have specific findings that a grand jury or a jury have to make. But with respect to the federal, there's an extensive review process that you have the ability as a defense attorney to contest it. This year, my understanding is that the DOJ has approved every death penalty request that has come to it. So I think if it did go federal, it would be almost certainly treated as a death penalty case. In terms of what the jury can consider at any sort of trial in this case, it would be issues like, you know, was this premeditated? Was this cold and capricious, if you will? What are the surrounding circumstances of this young man's life and mitigation? I don't know what the evidence is in the case. Everything will unfold. I don't know what the motive was. But certainly I know that the state authorities have pointed to the fact that this young man allegedly did not use a semi-automatic rifle. It was a .30-06 hunting rifle. And I have read descriptions of it being quite a difficult shot. There is some thought, at least by the state authorities, that whoever shot Mr. Kirk did rehearse and did plan for it.
Amy Lee, listening to you talk about the possibility of a death penalty, it adds a new layer, if you will, when you consider what we have heard from the state governor about the father being the one to identify Tyler Robinson, and ultimately that led to him being arrested and now facing the death penalty. Can I just add, I mean, as someone in the United States who would be following this, I assume, pretty closely, someone in your position here, when you heard how he came to be under arrest, what went through your mind?
Well, I probably wasn't as surprised as other people may have been. His father, I understand, is or has been a police officer, and is a person of great faith. Is how he's being portrayed in the media. And I've certainly had cases that have come to light through parents, through spouses, through not really children telling on their parents, but through family members and friends. So I'm sure the father is really doing some soul searching and making sure that he can live with himself. But I think particularly his law enforcement background contributed to his decision to do this.
So as far as next steps for this particular case, we understand there's going to be a court appearance on Tuesday. There will be formal charges at that point. What should we be watching for?
So what you'll have with the formal charges is there's a 100% likelihood that the initial plea will be not guilty. As the case unfolds, the state will have to give the defense team discovery. That is the evidence that the state intends to use. If it goes federal, the same procedure follows. There will then be all sorts of motions that can be filed by a defense attorney. Is there a statement that should be suppressed? Although I understand that Mr. Robinson, at least now, has not made any statements to the police. Are there any sort of suspect searches? Are there any sort of constitutional violations there? So over the next few months, you'll see unfold a little bit of discussion about what the evidence looks like. You'll see what the defense team is going to challenge in court, if anything. You might even hear some hints in those hearings about what the defense strategy is going to be and what the state strategy or the federal government strategy is going to be. Right now, I'm sure that the Utah Bureau of Investigation and the Federal Bureau of Investigation are taking statements from as many people as they can, whether they were at the event or whether they were in the neighborhood and knew the suspect. There will also be, of course, ballistics tests and an autopsy and all sorts of different pieces of evidence that would be presented in any trial of this case.
Amy Lee Copeland, former U.S. federal prosecutor, joining us from Savannah, Georgia. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.